cologne right now is what they doing, man. And Nike tennis shoes. They ain't talking about owning a factory. They just talking about continue to endorse these same corporations that Ali and other athletes were standing against, man. Now I'll open up the line shortly to get into that. But it's an insult to us. In fact, let me give you this clip from Muhammad Ali. I don't want you to hear it from me. I want you to hear it in his words, because he had to suffer much in terms of taking the kind of stand that Muhammad Ali took, man. And at a time that we see him in the conditions that he in, then the world had to come back and, of course, redeem and reclaim Muhammad Ali. History redeems Muhammad Ali for the kind of stance that he took. But as I said before, the only one I've seen in the NBA that's speaking out against war and has spoken out against the war was another player that played for the Washington Wizards, Etan Thomas. But again, the NBA, they came out quickly, disassociated themselves from his comments and didn't want him making no comments about the war. And what he said then, and if time permits, I'll play a part of that speech that he said. But what he said then is just as relevant today, if not even more relevant, and that's with a black man sitting down there in Washington, D.C. At a time when we see all of this going on. Your president wants to party like a rocket star. Your president down there in Washington, D.C. at the National Correspondents' Dinner trying to party like a rock star right now with a bunch of one-liners. Well, here we are on the brink of world economic collapse. We're on the brink of World War III when you got bad intelligence, or, of course, the same script that they used with Iraq talking about weapons of mass destruction, that now the Israeli lobbyists, the same neocons are back giving misinformation to Hagel, Chuck Hagel, Secretary of State. They're now preparing to go deeper into Syria, putting American troops on the ground in terms of boots on the ground, setting up a no-fly zone. And your president down there in Washington, D.C., man, trying to party like a rock star right now. Your president down in Washington, D.C. trying to party like a rock star. But let me see if I can go to this clip of Muhammad Ali in his own words. It's only about 3 to 4 minutes long, talking about the Vietnam War and why he took the kind of stand that he took then and would take the same today, and how he suffered. And many of these athletes, they want to talk Ali, but they don't want to walk Ali. If you notice, they want to talk Ali, but they don't want to walk Ali. So let me go to this clip and let you hear from Muhammad Ali in his own words, and then we'll come back in and go into some other stories before we open up the lines.
Immediately thereafter, he walked into the teeth of a monumental decision. He was drafted, and then he refused induction on the grounds of his religious convictions on war.
My conscience won't let me go shoot my brother or some darker people or some poor, hungry people in the mud for big, powerful America, and shoot them for what? They never called me nigger. They never lynched me. They never put no dogs on me. They never robbed me of my nationality, raped and killed my mother and father. What, I'm going to shoot them for what? How am I going to shoot them? Them little poor little black people and little babies and children and women. How can I shoot them poor people? I would just take me to jail.
While fighting imprisonment for his stand, Ali was also stripped of his title, denied a license to fight in the United States, and denied a visa to go overseas to fight. He was in a much tighter financial bind than most were aware of.
I don't want to see the world heavyweight champion driving the Volkswagen, guys in the Cadillacs and making fun of you. So I'm working today, I'm hauling, right? And so one day I had to speak at Canisius. Heard of Canisius? Canisius, Fairleigh Dickinson, C.W. Post. 3 colleges at $1,500 a college. Pretty good money. So I broke my wife's piggy bank. She had about $35 in it. $135. I broke the piggy bank to get gas money to get me to the college. And I got enough gas and food money to get the $4,500, the $1,500 lecture. At $45 would hold me, pay gas bills, light bills, till I get to the next college. This went on until the whole mess was over.
Inevitably, students would challenge Ali on his stand and his convictions. Remarkably, Ali more than held his own against students who had a far better formal education than he.
I'm saying you talking about me about some draft, and all of you white boys are breaking your neck to get to Switzerland and Canada and London. I'm not going to help nobody get something my Negroes don't have. If I'm going to die, I'll die now right here fighting you. If I'm gonna die, you my enemy. My enemy is the white people, not Viet Congs or Chinese or Japanese. You my opposer when I want freedom. You my opposer when I want justice. You my opposer when I want equality. You won't even stand up for me in America for my religious beliefs, and you want me to go somewhere and fight, but you won't even stand up for me here at home.
The immortal words of Muhammad Ali, man. Let me do this. Open up the lines. I'm going to take your thoughts, questions, comments, because I want to get back into this story as we look at some of these Baltimore headlines. But I want to get back into front page in the Sun paper this morning, front page in the Sun paper this past Sunday. How gangs made jail a stronghold. Also, Maynard praised as a tough, capable prison administrator, talking about Secretary Gary Maynard. And, of course, getting back into the Desperate Housewives. The Desperate Housewives of Central Booking. I got to get back into that. Or Central Hooking, as some would say, man. The Desperate Housewives of Central Booking. Or the Housewives of Central Booking. And looking at, of course, how the Sun paper continues to do this damage control story. To do this damage control story for Secretary Maynard, the head of public safety, who's now, his office is in Towson. I remember when Bishop Robinson was the head of Secretary of Public Safety. His office was in, I think it was in the Reisterstown Road Plaza. So we're going to have to ask, why did they move to Towson and when did they move to Towson? And looking at Secretary Gary Maynard, who apparently came from Iowa. And before that, after Iowa, he went to South Carolina. So we're going to have to follow that, because when you follow him, you follow, of course, almost the trail of the presidential election and how they travel with the Iowa caucus. And then the first elections are held, I believe, primaries are held in South Carolina. So you think your governor maybe knew that when he bought or tapped Gary Maynard? Or did Gary Maynard tap him? Is Gary Maynard what they call in, of course, the initiations in these lodges or these initiations in these gangs? Is he called a made man? Is Gary Maynard what they call a made man? That's the question we're going to have to eventually ask and look at and delve deeper into regarding Gary Maynard. And is it true when he was the warden out there in Iowa, they used to have him sick'em dogs? They used to have him dogs that they used to place on the prisoners out there. We're going to eventually have to get into that, get into South Carolina, and talk about, it was alleged, not while he was the Secretary of Public Safety, but they say just before he got there, they had prisoners that was having sex in the governor's mansion down there in South Carolina. We're going to eventually have to look and see if we see those same type of behaviors that's going on in Maryland. Because you do remember with the BC and DC madam. Now, the BC madam is Sheila Dixon and Stephanie Rollins. You do know that. But the DC madam, Gwen Paltrow, I think was her, not Gwen Paltrow, what was her? Deborah Jean Paltrow, I think was her name. Gwyneth Paltrow is that other white woman they running around talking about is the most beautiful woman in the world. But we do remember with the DC madam, she had a black book. And then there was a professor at UMBC, Brittany, what was her name? Brittany or Brittany Brandon or Brandon Brittany, who allegedly had a black book with a list of names from those in the Maryland Department of Transportation, state police, elected officials, and others that were running an escort service. You do remember that story of Gary McElhaney when he was the head of the Maryland Department of Transportation Police and them escorts they were bringing in, so-called VIPs from BWI Airport, man. But I know you don't want to have that discussion. You just want to talk about what went on in Central Booking. You don't want to expand the envelope and say, could this be going on in Annapolis with your governor? Could this been going on in City Hall when your governor was the mayor and your mayor was the city council president? But, you know, you got some, they say, those that say don't know and those that know they don't say. But whatever they do, whatever don't come out in the wash, will come out in the rinse, man. But how the gang made jail a stronghold. And they could not make it a stronghold unless you had elected officials such as Gary Maynard, who's a non-elected official, or your governor, who's supposed to be the head of Homeland Security, who's supposed to be the head of public safety, which he says that's his specialty right there. Look the other way. Of course, cameras that are inside of the jail that nobody wants to talk about. Cameras that are inside of the jail. Now, they got so many cameras on your block, but then they got cameras in the jail, and yet they even got bomb sniffing dogs that we found out in Boston. Don't they have some drug sniffing dogs they could bring in, man? If that was the issue that was running rampant. And of course, you remember your governor had the cell phones. Your governor had the cell phone jamming services. Now, you mean he couldn't jam them cell phones and confiscate them cell phones that was there? Or they didn't want to do it? That's the question we're going to have to ask. And This is front page Sun paper, and today it continues. How the gang made jail a stronghold. Observers are shocked by the scale of alleged corruption. And as I said again and again, that they have tried to limit this to just the black guerrilla family. And to some of you that keep talking about the black guerrilla family and talking about George and Jonathan Jackson, let's be clear. They have the potential to be a George and Jonathan Jackson, but they're not George and Jonathan Jackson. They have the potential to be Malcolm X. They have the potential. But you never read where Malcolm X was in the jail fighting with George and Jonathan Jackson. You never read where George and Jonathan Jackson was in the jail fighting with other members of the Panther Party. So let's be clear, man. They have the potential. But if they're in jail fighting with brothers that's Bloods and fighting with brothers with Clips that's Crips and fighting with brothers that are Muslims, then please stop comparing them to George and Jonathan Jackson. You can't even compare them to Michael Jackson, man. Please stop it. It becomes an insult to revolutionaries like Marshall Eddie Conaway. Becomes an insult to revolutionaries like Chairman Fred Hampton Sr. and Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. Becomes an insult to those such as our Brother Cody Scott, Brother Shakur, and others who are locked down. Brother Sukwe, and many others, man, that stood up inside of the institutions. Becomes an insult to those who are languishing in the prisons around the country right now. Batulu Shakur and others, when you say that these are revolutionaries. They have the potential to be revolutionaries, but they have yet to show it. They have yet to show it and demonstrate it. So again, you tune to the state of the city. As I said before, that the Sun paper has tried to limit their information and their conversation. As I said before, to confine it to make it look like this is just black women and security. What do you call them? Security guards, or they call them professional correctional officers. And we apparently are finding out, as the old song goes, there's a slim line between love and hate. And we finding out there's a slim line between a security guard and an inmate. Not a professional correctional officer, but a security guard and an inmate. There's a slim line, or a thin line, between the two. But the Baltimore Sun article continues to be damage control for Gary Maynard. And it was your governor just, I think it was 2 weeks ago, talking about how good of a secretary Gary Maynard was. And we see all of this now coming about. And you don't hear anybody talking about he needs to resign. They say, well, now he's going to go sleep in central booking. Let me tell him something, man. Now Mr. Bobo going to go sleep in central booking. I think it was Delegate Carter when she was running for mayor. She'd been there, done that, got the T-shirt and the hat to match, man, when she slept outside. When she slept outside for about a week, Gary Maynard. So you might want to call Delegate Carter and take some notes, man. But here come Mr. Bobo. Mr. Bobo now said he going to sleep in central booking, that some of the upper management will now be given a polygraph test, man. As if that's going to, of course, repair the damage that's been done, bring back the lives that's been lost. And to see the news media, I saw the news media last night show one person that they said was killed, Gary Lackle, who they put a hit out on. But how about other black men that's been killed in that prison? How about other Africans who were killed in that prison downtown as well as throughout the state of Maryland? Because they're essentially trying to confine this just to Baltimore. But how about throughout the state of Maryland, where you've had brothers and sisters from Africa, brothers and sisters from South America that's been killed in the institutions, and their families still have not had their day in court or have had justice, man. But again, as I've said before, that we have to look at and ask questions, as Delegate Kurt Anderson, Delegate Jill Carter, Delegate Mike Schmiegel, and others have been asking. What did they know? When did they know? And what did they do about it when they found out about it? But again, who bears the ultimate responsibility is the governor. The governor. As I said before, when he held his post-General Assembly press conference, and the media knew about this, Senate President Mike Miller knew about this, Speaker of the House Michael Bush knew about this, many of your delegates knew about it, those in key positions knew about it, but the news media, Washington Post, Baltimore Sun, sat on the story because they didn't want anything to make this governor. They didn't want anything to make this great pretender look bad in the eyes of the public and look bad in terms of the world media right now. But the world media is looking at this saying you got to be the laughing stock of the country, man. You've got to be the laughing stock of the country. Although they just recently had a big scandal, I believe, in Colorado with like 211 officers. So the question we're going to have to look at is, man, is how many brothers in the meantime and in between time with all of this other mess lost their lives, lost their freedom. Of course, may have been victims of experimentations inside of the institution, might have been victims of torture, as we saw in Chicago under John Burroughs.